Hey guys, welcome back to Community Starcraft 2. I'm your host Magnet, and today we're going to be covering some standard TvZ openers. As you can see there, we're going to be looking at safe marine expanding. That's going to be with a marine and a tank and some mines to hold off any all-ins that you might come across. And we're going to be going with the Command Center first build as well. So I'll show you both of those and explain the different nuances to them so that you guys can learn them and run them in your own games. Whether it's on ladder or against your friends or whatever, these should be pretty flexible in pretty much any situation. So, yeah, we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. I don't really know what else to say. We're going to be in a custom game right now against a very easy Zerg. We'll just go ahead and start the game. And this is what we're going to usually do for all these build order or opener videos, so that we can just focus on running the opener and not have to worry about our opponent doing anything weird to us. Make sure we're recording. Everything looks good. Okay, cool. So we're just loading the map right now, and once we're in there, we will start explaining what's going on. So, my keyboard's not working.
Not enough minerals.
Alright, let me just tab out really quickly. Hopefully that'll fix it. Okay, cool. Sorry, sometimes the keyboard does not work if I tab in and out like that, so we'll go ahead and resume the game. And no, typing ASD is not part of the build, so don't worry too much about that. Just sometimes when you tab in back and forth between certain applications, Starcraft keyboard doesn't respond. That's a little bug. I hope they get it fixed here pretty soon. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going up to 9 SCVs. We're going to put a 10th one in queue as soon as we can, and we're going to rally the 9th one up to our wall, or rather up to where our wall is going to be built. So go ahead and send that guy out. He should be able to build the depot as soon as he gets there with just a tad of money left over. It'll be just a little worse since my keyboard was not working at the beginning of the game, but that's okay. It shouldn't throw us off by too much. Jeez, all this derping around. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put a 12th SCV in queue, and that's going to be our queue. That's a bad word. That's going to be our signal to go ahead and build a barracks on 12. So we have 12 SCVs making right now as our supply is at 12. We're going to make a barracks. We're going to hotkey our barracks, of course. Continue to make SCVs. We're going to make a gas on 14. So I'm going to rally the 13th worker over here, just because I like to, you know, make sure that everybody is doing their job exactly when they should be doing it. So we'll send him over, have him build a gas as soon as we get there. There we go. Continue to make workers here. We're going to make workers up to 16. So 14's making, 15 is going to come up. So now we're at 15 supply. 16 is in queue. Go ahead and put a depot down with this same worker that's working on your barracks, so that when he's done, he just goes right back to building something in order to complete your wall. And make a marine when your barracks finishes. After this, we're going to tell this SCV to go out to the enemy base because we need to scout and figure out what's going on. We're at 17 supply and 16 workers, so we need to make sure we start our orbital right then so we can get our mules up as soon as possible. And that's a little bit of a point of debate. We'll cover that in just a second. Make a reactor on your barracks as soon as your marine is done. And if your SCV gets blocked out and can't scout, go ahead and open your wall and just close it right back up. Okay, so once your command center finishes, go ahead and start an SCV and drop a mule. We're going to go ahead and make a supply depot right now, just because there's not really a better time to do it in this particular opener. Just get your SCV ready in order to build your factory. I did pull him just a tad early, but that should hopefully offset the keyboard not working at the beginning of the game, so that it runs really similar to how you're going to see it in your own games. When your marines start, that's when your factory can be started. And don't worry too much about this scout. We'll talk about him in the replay. Go ahead and pull a worker up here, assuming that your scout saw everything that was appropriate, and start building your bunker. And then start rallying your marines down here in order to protect your natural expansion area. Okay, not too much going on right now. We're just building SCVs and we're building marines. Getting our bunker up on the way. Our factory's about to finish, and when that factory finishes, we're going to want to add a tech lab. Once the factory's done, we can start making our command center.
Not enough minerals.
We'll miss Marines for just a second, but that's okay. It's actually more important to get your tank out, so we'll go ahead and make the tank instead. Okay, tank is on the way. Marines are going to be skipped for just a moment, just so we can make sure we get everything out. And we really do want to prioritize SCVs instead of Marines at this point. So get another supply depot started in order to help start your wall, and continue making those Marines. We may be supply blocked for just a second because getting this depot out on time is kind of difficult with everything else that's going on. Your minerals kind of do come to a bit of a stopping point at this stage. So once your tank is done, go ahead and lift off your factory and your barracks and swap the add-ons there. Make sure to siege your tank. We'll continue making SCVs with this worker. And we're going to start stim with the tech lab as soon as we can. Continue making Marines, we'll continue dropping mules. And then from here you can take your second gas and turn your orbital into, or rather turn your command center into an orbital once it's done. Okay, cool. This is pretty much it. From here, all you have to worry about is making mines, and we'll maybe just make another pair in order to assure that we can get everything down on time. Okay, cool. Alright, so that's pretty much the build, and I'll explain why this is going to be effective when you run it in your own games as well. We'll go ahead and lift our command center off and land it while we're not doing anything. Okay, cool. So I'm going to jump into the replay, and we'll explain everything that was going on here just to assure that you guys have a good handle on what's happening in the game. Now, we have to wait for this silly glitch to clear, so we'll have to just kind of hang out here for just a second. But it's just a general summary in that build. The point of it is to get a command center down relatively early, but most importantly is the safety. This is one of the builds you're probably going to run mostly at lower leagues. At higher leagues you might get a little bit behind, but even then, sometimes it's worth it just to run those kinds of builds so that you can check against all-ins and just shove them away and win in a macro game if that happens. So. It's a middle-of-the-road kind of expansion build. It's not too greedy, it's not too overly safe. It's pretty decent timing. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the replay, and I'll explain everything that just happened so you can get a better handle on this opener. Okay, so again, just to start the game off, we will be going ahead and making a worker as soon as we can. Again, mine wasn't working, so I did miss a worker for just a few seconds. It's not the biggest deal in the whole world, but if you can avoid it, try to just start the worker as soon as possible. At least, if anything, this will make my timings just a tad slower, so that if you compare your own timings against mine, you won't have such an insane standard to measure up to, since I've run these builds like 10 or 12 times before introducing them in these videos. So, we're going to go ahead and again rally our 9th worker out here while the 10th one is in queue to assure we can build our supply depot on time. Normally he'll get here with about 105 or 110 minerals. Mine got there a little later because, again, my keyboard wasn't working at the beginning of the game. So yeah, we're going to continue to make SCVs. There's our 11th one in queue. And we're going to put a 12th one in queue because we know we need to make our barracks on 12. There's no reason to do anything besides just make an SCV here. Alright, cool. So the SCVs, or rather the supply depot's finishing up. Go ahead and skip forward just a little bit since this is all pretty much review anyway. We'll go ahead and drop barracks on 12. And again, we're going to make a gas on 14, but I like to rally my 13th worker over here so that he can make it as soon as we have the money. And he's going to come out, and bam. Now we're going to queue up to 16 SCVs. You usually don't want to queue your SCVs too hard, but if you know everything that you're going to do in an opener, it's okay to just queue until you know you need to stop making them. And in this case, we know we're going to make our orbital on 16 supplies, so there's no reason to wait to queue those up. Again, with this worker out here, go ahead and set a supply depot up and make sure you're mining gas as soon as possible once your geyser finishes. Okay, cool. This Marine's going to come out and he'll just hang out to protect us against any cheeses or anything like that. And this is set up like this so that you can hold pretty much anything you want with that one Marine and with a wall here. If you just repair, if they try to attack it, you shouldn't have any problems. Again, we've already had our orbital planned out for a long time. Reactor on the barracks as soon as that's done, and then scout with this SCV. And I'm going to explain what this is for as soon as he gets over there. So by this stage in the build, again, we're going to land a mule as soon as this is done and start an SCV. And we will start a supply depot somewhere near our mineral line. just because in this build it's a little weird. There's a couple of hiccups, and those are really hard to eliminate. You have to run everything basically perfectly to eliminate those. But we're going to put our supply depot down on 18 supply, just to be sure we have that ready up until after our command center is started, so we can start making depots out here instead. There's a few different reasons, but needless to say, just do it here, because there's not much of a reason not to at this point. Okay, try to get your SCV out here when your gas is at about 100. I pulled him a little bit early, but again, not the biggest deal ever. Go ahead and drop your factory and start 2 Marines as soon as that is available. Okay, now it's time to talk about this scout. By this point in the game, it's about 4 minutes. The Zerg should have an expansion here, and I didn't check for it because the VRAZ AI is not going to have it. They don't play like people usually should or do. So what you're going to be looking for is an expansion here. If you do not see an expansion, then you need to not make this bunker down here as soon as I did. You need to probably actually make a bunker on the high ground, and eventually you're going to put your tank out and start crawling bunkers forward so that you can secure your natural expansion much more safely. If they haven't expanded, that's going to mean they're probably spending money on units, and those units could come and attack you and do a lot of damage. Now, once you verify that there's a hatchery here or not, you're going to walk up into the main and see what you can see. It's best to have your scout click on one of these minerals so that he won't be stopped by any units here. He'll just phase right through them, and you'll be able to get in here and see what's going on. If you see a baneling nest or a roach warren, in addition, either regardless of whether you see a hatchery here or not, then you need to do the same thing. Put a bunker down and crawl bunkers out along with your tank before you start mining from this base. So those are just minor adjustments. If you were to just go down here and place a bunker down, you probably would lose everything out here, and then you'd have a really hard time trying to catch up in the game. So that's just one adjustment you need to make in this build if you're going to run it. And it's okay if this worker dies. That's his job. He needs to get that information so you know exactly how to react. Now we're just going to pretend that we saw nothing unusual here. We're going to pretend that we saw a hatchery, and we're going to pretend that we did not see any roach warren or baneling nest here in the main. So in this case, once our scout dies, we're going to walk out here, and we're going to throw a bunker down so that we can start rallying Marines in this bunker and protect our natural expansion as soon as possible. Again, continue up your SCVs, make sure your factory and everything is still producing, and then when this bunker is filled, or rather when this bunker is done, go ahead and load it up with Marines. Our mule timing is about to come up. You'll see it should be at 50 energy. Try to drop that as soon as possible so that you can make sure you're getting the most out of your income as possible. Then once the factory is done, go ahead and drop that tech lab because you need your tank out as soon as possible. And then this is about the time when you should have the money for the command center. Sometimes it'll be a little bit earlier. It definitely will be earlier if you didn't have to spend money on this bunker first. So if you are spending money on the bunker because your scout didn't see anything weird, this is the time when you can throw it down. And you should see it come down here in just a second. Bam. The other option that you can do, which I did not do in this game, is you can put the command center on the low ground if you're confident that the Zerg is not up to anything weird. I would say if you're not sure, just build it on the high ground because you can always abandon this bunker and run your units away and get your tank out on the high ground. So this is kind of another option you can play in your build. If you're totally comfortable with this build and you've had a lot of success with it as far as not getting attacked early, you can just go ahead and throw the command center down on the low ground so you won't have to wait for it to fly down there and start mining. So it's another option you can run. Again, continue to make Marines here. We're getting to the point where we need to think about adding another supply depot, but it needs to be after our tank. So if you have Marines in queue, you can cancel them right here to assure your tank gets up as soon as possible. If you didn't have any problems with your keyboard at the beginning of the game like I did, you shouldn't actually have this hiccup in the game. So we're continuing SCVs. We're going to resume Marines once we have the money for it. And more importantly, we're going to start walling off here with a couple of depots so that if you have banelings or roaches or something, they can't get to any of your units back here until they knock down these depots. And it's a lot better to lose depots than to lose your army. So okay, resuming forward, there's not really that much else to say. Another option you can play is you can add a gas a little earlier than I did. Mine was more of a conservative marine heavy expansion. If you wanted to make this more about mech, or if you wanted to get faster upgrades, you could add a gas now in order to mine that a lot quicker. Now regarding this barracks and factory switch, this is going to be so that you can start adding mines down near your natural expansion. So the whole idea with this is that if you have 3 or 4 mines right here and you get all in with a whole bunch of roaches, all 3 or 4 of those mines are probably going to fire. You're going to have a bunker here with Marines that you can repair, and this tank back here is going to get off a lot of shots. You can see its range just extends right into the natural. So if he needs to fight up here, then he's going to have to take damage from all these mines and this tank and all these Marines before he's able to actually do anything. So this is why I say this is a really good build against all-ins, because all this stuff right here, plus your mines that are coming up, are going to do a lot in order to hold off all-ins. From here, the build's kind of in your hands. You can add barracks, which is probably what I would do on this renditions. I started stim. If you wanted to go for a more upgrade heavy style, you would again take that second gas earlier than I did. You would add double engineering bay and do that. If you wanted to go mech, you would add this gas even earlier and start adding factories and getting Hellions up and more tanks and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much the foundation of that opener. I hope that all makes sense. We're going to go over one more, and that's going to be the Command Center first opener, which is a little weird, and I hope I don't screw it up, because I have screwed up in the past and when trying to film these videos where I've been like, okay, cool, let's build a barracks on 12. Oh wait, that's not Command Center first, lol. So we're going to jump into the custom games here. We might get these annoying little pop-ups once again, and that's just a bug in battle.net. There's not much I can do about that until they get it fixed. So this might be a good opportunity to say that if you didn't understand that last opener, please post any questions you might have about it in the comments. There are also a whole bunch of different openers, and I chose to show that one because it is so safe and it is pretty simple to run against pretty much anything Zerg can do. It's not the greatest economic build, which is why I chose to show you guys Command Center first, which is what we're going to do here. Command Center first basically says, I'm confident in my ability to expand, and I don't care what you're doing, I can hold it off. So if you're not that brave yet, or if you're not that comfortable with the game, you might want to run the first build instead of this one that we're going to show. This one isn't going to be as long on the opener because there's a lot of branching points. So yeah, I don't know how far we're going to run this in there. Maybe only up to about maybe 30 supply, even if that far, whereas the last one we ran pretty far. So okay. Again, you want to spam that SCV button to assure you get them out as soon as possible. You don't want to have any gaps in your SCV production because that's always going to screw up your build. I've had a lot of people say stuff like that to me before, where they saw a build that I was talking about and they ran it and they're like, well, by this point in the build I had like 700 or 800 minerals left over, and why is that? Now, that was probably because they were missing workers and not getting enough income like they should. Or they're just not spending their money as fast as they should be, so all their timings are about a minute or a minute and a half late, and that can be devastating in these openers. So again, we're going to rally our SCV forward. This is our 9th one on 10 supply. He's going to build our depot.
Not enough minerals. Not enough minerals.
And on this one, we're going to make sure we send him back to the mineral line, because we're not going to build a barracks on 12 this time. We're actually going to build a command center.
Additional supply depots required.
So go ahead and send him back. You can scout with him, but this opener actually doesn't really care about that. So I'm going to say for now that you don't need to. It'll allow us to get a little bit faster command center. Okay, so there's not much to say at this point. We're going to make a command center on 14, and it's going to be to help wall off. So if you want to, you can send your 14th SCV out in order to build the command center so that you don't interrupt any mining on here. It'll be a tad later than if you were to send somebody out, but again, I prefer the muscle memory over spending every single mineral exactly when it's supposed to be spent. I mean, I know that's a big deal, but it's not that huge. Sometimes just running what you're more comfortable with works better. So we're going to go ahead and make a command center on 14 and a barracks on 15 in order to wall all this off. I'm going to continue SCVs back here. Now what we have is a wall made out of a depot, a command center, and a barracks. And this may look risky, but it's actually pretty dang safe. We're going to make a supply depot on 17 because we don't want to get supply blocked during all of this. So we can still assure that we're making SCVs and all that good stuff. And again, I don't know how far I should really run this. I guess we'll just go based upon feel and see where I think a good deviation point is. Supply depot's done. Again, we're getting it in there so that we don't get supply blocked. You want to start a Marine with this barracks as soon as humanly possible. So we're going to go ahead and get him out and send our other worker back to the mineral line. And this is the point where we want to start making our orbitals as well. This other command center, you're going to make it to an orbital as well as soon as it's done. And let's see. Yeah, this is the point where I would start adding more barracks, just to assure that you can get a lot of Marines out. And I will be running this variation instead of a more tech-oriented opener because those are a little harder to run. So we're going to go up to 3 barracks really quickly so we can get a ton of Marines out and we can protect our expansion really well.
Upgrade complete.
Go ahead and drop your mule. When that one finishes, you can drop your other mule when this one finishes. And by this point, it's up to you when you want to move out. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here and we'll talk about it more in the replay. So that's pretty much the Command Center first opener for TvZ. And I know it seems a little barren at this point, but I need to explain a whole bunch of different intricacies that make this opener work. And a bunch of different options that you can run to sort of customize the opener to whatever you want to do. So one good thing about Terran openers is that they'll leave you in a good place to where you can start making decisions pretty early in the game. And you might be wondering, how is it possibly safe in order if I go Command Center first against any cheeses that they might bring? And I'll explain that as well. There's a whole bunch of replays you can look up for that kind of stuff, especially in Korean pro leagues, where they go Command Center first all the time and they hold cheeses all the time. There's one really funny one that Fantasy did where he went Command Center first and the other guy pulled everything he had, 6 Zerglings and all of his drones, and killed absolutely nothing. The Terran player just laughed at him and won. It's a pretty funny game. So yeah, we're going to rally this guy out, our 9th worker. The 10th worker is in queue, so we're going to be heading out and building a supply depot on our wall as soon as he gets there. That's always really standard for this matchup, especially for this build. You want to be able to wall all this off so that you can protect against any Zergling plus drone or whatever else kind of attacks that you want to protect against. Okay. Not much to talk about with a Command Center first opener. You kind of just sit around and you wait for your money to pile up until you can build the Command Center. So I guess at this point in the game, just be worried about making sure you're doing everything on time. And again, we're going to go 14 Command Center, so we're going to rally this worker up here in order to build the Command Center as soon as he gets there. And you can halt SCVs for just a second. If you want to, you could go 15 Command Center instead, and then 15 barracks, but the difference is really negligible. We're going to send a worker up here in order to get this barracks done as soon as possible. I could have pulled him just a little bit earlier, but we're going to continue SCVs behind this because we can afford to be pretty greedy. Okay, so the way this is going to work, this is a little tricky, but if you do get cheesed, they could have Zerglings and a whole bunch of drones or whatever arriving at your base pretty soon. If that happens, they might try to target these workers down. So you might want to have a handful of workers on standby so that if they get killed, you can resume building and keep your wall up, enough to where you can get a Marine out of here. Sometimes it can be pretty dang close, but a lot of times Zerg just won't do it because it doesn't work most of the time if the Terran just runs this properly. So if you start to get attacked here, pull 2 or 3 workers at a time and have them get reassigned to these buildings if the SCV that's building them dies. Then of course you can always have a couple of SCVs to repair your depot. It just requires some good control here, which is why this is a little bit harder to run. It is still safe from cheeses, but it does require you to work quite a bit harder than other standard openers where you go barracks before Command Center, or at least barracks before anything. And again, we did get that depot. We started the depot on 17. That's only to assure that once we get to 19, we don't get stalled on SCV production. Once your barracks is done, you want to start a Marine right away. Don't waste any time on that. Start your orbital as soon as it's clear from making SCVs. Should be at about 20 supply. And then your other orbital should start right after that. So there we go. And with this SCV, you can go ahead and start a second barracks, but this is where it starts to deviate quite a bit. If you're really confident as far as holding this wall with just a handful of Marines and some repair, you can do that, and you can just drop extra gases instead and get into a factory a lot quicker. If not, which I ran a little bit more novice version of it, you will want to start adding extra barracks so you can just get tons and tons of Marines out in order to protect your base and in order to secure your natural expansion earlier. Now, one other option you can run, the next stage we need to worry about is moving your command center down to the natural so you can actually mine with it. It's not the worst thing ever if it just sits here and helps produce SCVs for a little while, but you want to get the advantage from this command center as soon as possible. What you can do is once your barracks finishes, you can use the guy that you built to finish the barracks to open your wall and go scout the Zerg and perform pretty much the same scouting we did in the last build, where you just check for a natural expansion, you check for any gas mining or bathing nest or a roach warren or anything crazy like that. And if that's not there, once you get a handful of Marines, you can start moving down and start setting up bunkers in your natural. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. Those openers kind of speak for themselves. There are a lot of transitions and stuff that you need to be looking out for during those. So if you have any questions, please be sure to post them in the comments down below, and I will answer them if they were not already answered in the video. And if I get a whole bunch of people that are wondering the same thing, I will make a new video on it, because that just means that I missed something that should be pretty obvious. So I hope this helps you guys out. Check out our sponsors, which are located in the bottom left: SE2 Replay Stats, Allstate, and Propel Zero. You can also check out my gaming team's website, which is akagamingteam.com, and my stream is also listed there, twitch.tv/magnetse2. I am a Protoss player by trade, so you will see some laddering from Protoss on there. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and there should be just one more build order video that we're going to be talking about as far as openers, and that's TVT. That should be coming up next, so stay tuned.